the Kinsey report. And it wasn't just the Kinsey report, it's who's allowed the Kinsey report to be used in our education systems. Now, I talk about education systems, and I've just mentioned briefly that I was educated. Let's just rewind there, because most of the people that work in this building behind you, they're meant to be educated. The people that have developed this policy are supposed to be educated. The only thing they're educating is your children into sexualisation. It is a narrow, slippery road when we all have to accept that the freedoms and the educations which we give openly our children are actually dictated by paedophiles. Sorry. So it doesn't just start, I have to say, with the education on the front of what your children are being taught. It's also how you're being taught. How you're being led blindly into the idea that institutions such as universities always act in the best interest of children. And I don't mean to speak like that, like a twat, but it just comes so naturally when you've absorbed so much of the crap that you hear. Now, a lot of people will call me a conspiracy theorist, which makes me laugh. Because to conspire, actually, from the term, I think, I'm going to leave that one there. I'll let you go and look it up. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. None of us are conspiracy theorists. We're exposing the truth. Now, if people choose not to believe that their children are abused, then, as Kimberly has said, go and do your own research. I did. I didn't believe a damn word she said. I thought she was a crackpot. Just said that. So I thought, I'm going to go and find out. I'm going to read the Kinsey report. I was sick 3 times. I watched Kimberly's live where she report. I was sick 3 times. Even listening to Kimberly then has got me goosebumped and I want to go and harm people. But that won't help, because that means that those people dive further underground. So what do we have to do? We have to educate all the sleepy people that your children you think are safe. TikTok, Facebook, the over-sexualisation of children is in everything. The media washout is proof that the paedophiles are running every aspect of this country, including our education systems. If anybody cared about this, it would be all over Facebook. There would be 10,000 people stood here right now, and we'd have more than 4 coppers that are thinking, what a bunch of conspiracy theorists. I'm not here to be funny, but it does help. We have to have a little bit of what I call in Devon tumour humour. Because if you don't laugh at the state of the system, then you become a state. We are a walking mess. Hot mess. We have paedophiles writing policies. We have paedophiles teaching in schools. We have police officers that are paedophiles. We have a system where you report paedophilia to a paedophile who then will write a policy about paedophilia to teach it to children who will then turn them into... Well done. There's no round of applause at the end of that one, because funnily enough, we don't, and we're not supposed to applaud paedophiles, but in this country we do. 2 years suspension from teaching. It doesn't just stop there. Let me tell you about how to read this DBS or ACRO report. Now that is hilarious. So on the DBS or ACRO report, most of you, if any of you go and get one tomorrow, you'll notice if you've changed your name because you're a paedophile, you will have at the top of your report something that says alias. Okay? Now, alias means your first name. So that will be alias 1. Now, when the first time I looked at a bent person's acro when setting up family superheroes, I had loads of paedophiles who really weirdly wanted to come and work with children. Isn't that a shock? And when I was going through their DBSs, I was looking into a bit of their history. They've worked in schools, they're a lead carer, and guess what else they had? Level 2 safeguarding. Well, come on in, guys, come on in. And then when you look at this advanced acro and DBS, you're going, hold on, alias. So you go to someone that works in child protection and they tell you, everybody has the right to rehabilitation, everybody has the right to live their life, and that includes paedophiles. So while we think that there is a sex offenders register, oh yes, what a lovely thing that is. How many of you have actually managed to access it and find someone? You can't type it in and you have to scroll all the way down. They don't make it easy. Why don't they make it easy? Because they don't want you to safeguard your children. They don't create education and they don't allow it systemically. And I'm going to get on to my biggest bugbear in a minute and how this all ties in. But they don't do it because they're thinking, oh, we're going to lower the consent of teenage pregnancy. I'll let you all into a little secret, right? Some guys here, very, 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 very intuitive. I'm on that 8th century university stuff because paedophilia has been going as long as humankind has. And for as long as humankind has, people haven't wanted to address it. So, if you want to call me a crackpot, or I have called Kim a crackpot, for addressing this, then go right ahead. I don't care if I come across as a little bit zany. That's going to come on to my next thing. So we've got the education here. That's set up nicely. What's it for? Kim hasn't mentioned this, but I will tell you my extensive research into this is to lower the age of consent by 2025. Pie is still being printed. I'll get onto that as well. So how do we lower the age of consent and why? In America, and I know we do seem to follow suit with the Yanks, in America they've created a law which means that if there's a 10-year age gap between the sex offender, so I mean the person perpetrating the crime and the victim, it can be questionable as to whether or not it was just good grooming. So in this country, the idea is, because we've had an increase in the amount of sexual activity, in the amount of sexual violence, but more importantly to the British justice system, and they don't like that, we've had an increase of people on the sex offenders register. So instead of dealing with paedophiles, they're going to deal with the sex offenders register. And to get that down, it won't be a criminal offence to have sex with a 10-year-old. Isn't that great? So, by 2025, not only we will have allowed in the RSE education, which will have groomed sufficiently our children so that they can be groomed on social media, so that they can be groomed within the school, so that they can safely show their teachers their genitalia. No, thank you very much. And you're not going to be able to opt out. So why is this crazy woman from Devon coming to Wales and telling you about it? Well, you guys won't have an opt-out, but what you do here does affect us in Scotland, in Wales, in England, but more importantly, this is a global problem. This has been developed in Israel. This is not something that has just come up overnight. In 2003, it was quite openly written in The Guardian that this was the main objective, to lower the amount of prison intake on sex offenders. If that is our global aim, then it kind of means that we're encouraging, paying, and prostituting our children. So how do we do this? Well, we've nailed the education system. Done. What about the social care system? Now, this is my bugbear since I've come into it, and obviously going down the rabbit hole that Kimberly has sent me on, I've come out feeling a little bit like, oh my God, it can't be. Everywhere there's children, there's paedophiles. It gets worse. So in the systemic abuses that we have these lovely people that go, oh, this child is displaying worrying behaviours. Oh, great, okay, let's get a social worker involved. The social worker will go, oh yeah, this child is worried. Okay, what should we do? Should we remove it? Yeah, just take it away. There's too many problems. Okay, we'll take the child away. So where are we going to put it? I'm going to tell you something really bloody scary here, and the police know about this because they probably deal with foster kids that abscond all the time. And I'm going to briefly mention something that a lot of you in Wales won't have heard about, but I want you to start screaming about soon. 86% of children that come out of foster care in Great Britain are sexually abused. That's not before they went in, that's when they came out. So, as Kimberly said, these safeguarding protocols, these police officers, these social workers, these educators, these policy writers, where are you now? 1 in 3 children in Great Britain has been abused. That's you, that's every other pissing person on this street. There's 1 in 3 people in this building have been sexually abused. What have they gone on to do? They've gone on to write a normalised policy that allows it to carry on. If it's been going on since the 8th century, it's this century we need to bloody change it. Enough of your idleness. Bring 5 people, bring 10. Where are you standing outside your schools? You might as well send your children in a thong. Because if you stand and you do nothing, you are silent. Your children are not Gillick competent, yet they can show their genitals to a teacher. Your children aren't allowed to decide by law whether or not they can live with their parents without the approval of a family court, but they can show their genitals to their teacher. Now, I've gone a little bit further on this, and I'm going to bring you into the next stage of this, which no one has discussed yet. I work with a lady, and she's probably watching this, and she's a whistleblower, and she's being targeted for something that we did an interview on. Now, as most of you will probably know, there's a lot of corruption that goes on in social services, in the education system. Well, that's why we're all here today. This particular whistleblower has blown out on something that's going to blow your minds, but it kind of makes sense. With the increase of sexualisation of children becomes the increase in STIs. So how do they get around this? Right now, being written by a paedophile organisation that was actually banned in Australia. They now own a company called DNA Legal. They do most of your phlebotomy and hair strand testing, and they are run by paedophiles. They are based in Frome, I never get that one right, in Somerset, and they are on the same building as Thurrock Social Services. Thurrock Social Services have the most amount of child deaths that are recorded, just not explained. A lot of them are sexually related deaths. Now, the great thing about this little coming together is it means that the NHS and doctors are being guided on how to confidentially treat children who have sexually transmitted diseases. So, in the next 6 months, your child, aged 8 years old, who doesn't know whether it wants to be a pumpkin or an armchair, is going to be able to go in with syphilis or gonorrhea and come out without your parental consent with a prescription. Now, as Kim's mentioned, your child must have had sexual intercourse in order to get chlamydia. But that's okay, because your child is sexual from birth, so your child now has sexual rights, which means that your child, as of the end of this year, is going to be able to go into a doctor's where you thought it was safe. You thought it was just the social care system. You thought it was just the education system. No. This is from the top, as Kim says, top down. This is happening in every single sector. So it doesn't just mean that we have to wipe out the education system. We do. It doesn't mean we just have to get rid of the social care system. We do. It means that we kind of have to try and bend the way that everyone else in this country thinks to say, why are we still listening to these people? They are paedophile promoters. They are a global network of enablers. And they don't listen to you. They don't listen to your fears, and they don't listen to your children.
They shut us up.
They've shut us up. Yeah, they've shut us all up. But it's okay, because there are things you can do. Number one, you've all listened to Kimberly. You all know what she's at. She's written policies. What you can all do now, today, tomorrow, is ask Kimberly, what can we do to support you? You email your MPs. You lobby every single organisation. You tell the Children's Commissioner they're a pile of poop. How can children only contact the Children's Commissioner when they're not allowed? And this is what's going to get me onto my last point, because this is the best way of silencing victims of abuse. So this year, you will hear me all gobbing off about my biggest bugbear, and that is the deprivation of liberties orders being placed on children. Not just any children, children that cite abuse in care. Today, there are 4,793 children under the age of 16 on deprivation of liberties orders. One particular child, I had to get to swallow a SIM card so I could know where she was. She cited abuse from the age of 8 years old. She was raped in care. She showed her bleeding genitalia to a teacher who reported it to the police, and the police went NFA because the social worker said she makes it up. On a deprivation of liberties order, she has been trafficked throughout the UK, where she has been abused in every single care home. And on a deprivation of liberties order, she doesn't have any education, she doesn't have any right to see her parents, she doesn't have any friends. When she leaves the care system, which will be when she's 19 because of the new education rules, what will happen is she'll be cited and she will be put into a long-term mental care facility. She's already in a psychiatric ward with 24-hour round-the-clock care. She's 14 years old. She stopped eating 2.5 years ago, so she has to be force-fed intravenous through a tube, and she doesn't see anyone, apart from the doctor and the staff nurse and the 2 security guards that have been sat outside her door. She is one of 4,793 children in this country that has cited abuse to schools, to safeguarding leads, and because they spoke out against the judges, the social workers, the teachers that abused them, they were silenced. So if anyone thinks that maybe Kimberly might be going on a little bit about it, it's far worse than she says. It is far, far worse. So I think if anybody wants to do anything, wake up, shake up, and stop letting paedophiles run our bloody country.